once you release a song now, it's not just going to live on that artist's page. It's going to have a life of its own and be used and be part of mixes and remixes and be in your wedding video. And it's going to, those 5 seconds are going to be taken here and those 10 seconds here. And so, the main thing that the music industry is trying to do is to get as much value out of it as possible.
You're listening to Music Growth Talks, the podcast for musicpreneurs, with Andrew Apanov.
Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Apanov, this is Music Growth Talks, and you're listening to episode number 133 with Amadea Choplin, the CEO of Pegs, an LA-based company which is like a search engine for music and video that can identify reused content on over 40 platforms through its unique fingerprinting technology. Just to give you a basic example, even if it's a half a second sample of your song that was remixed and tweaked in a way, this platform will find it. And if someone created a GIF and uploaded it to Giphy out of your music video, it will be detected as well. It's quite powerful, and it's more precise than YouTube's Content ID, for example. And what's interesting, when I originally scheduled a call with Amadea in late April, I knew much less about PACs than I do now, and the original idea was to talk about the controversial Article 13 of the Copyright Directive, which was voted in favor by European Union in March. It's now Article 17, and we do talk about it in the second half of the conversation, and it's super interesting and important for all creatives and music tech startups. So don't skip that part, please. But I want to bring particular attention to what PACs does overall, and as you will see, it can be highly beneficial to indie creators and record labels among you. In the show notes, I'm also linking to a Medium story posted by PACs founder and CEO Rusty Turek. It was published after this conversation of mine with Amadea, and that article covers some interesting data analyzing videos uploaded to YouTube last year, and that article made quite a lot of headlines. And the insights are really cool. For example, that music and entertainment are the only two categories that disproportionately deliver high returns on the investment for platforms. Music is the only category that generates the most views consistently while being less costly to host, which means that, music is YouTube's most profitable category. And that's partly because music videos are relatively short, or that most videos with over 1 billion views are, you guessed it, music videos. Go to datamusic.com to find show notes to these episodes after listening to it, of course. As there is a lot of valuable thoughts and information in that article. It's linked there. And so let me and PACs know what you think via email, SoundCloud, and Instagram, Twitter, whatever you prefer. And thank you for listening. Amadea, I'm really glad and excited to welcome you to Music Growth Talks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you don't mind this kind of direct question to you right away, do you mind sharing what PACs does as a company? Because I just have to ask you to give some context to our listeners, because some of them might be familiar with the company, but I'm pretty confident that a lot of our listeners don't know what exactly you do, even like considering the importance of your work for the creative and music industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be perfectly normal for a lot of people not to know, because we've been fairly quiet since we launched 5 years ago now. So what PACs does essentially is, PACs is a technology. And we're a technology that works a little bit like Shazam, in the sense that we have something called fingerprinting for both music and video. And what we do is, instead of matching a song when we hear it in the room that surrounds you and telling you what it is, we match the song as soon as it comes up on any of the online platforms. and say you have a piece of music that's out there that you've recorded and placed online, and then somebody else uploads it to their SoundCloud account or to the backdrop of a video that's then on Twitter, then we automatically spot it. And then we report that to the content creators, and then they can do a range of things with that. Initially, they can at least know that it's out there, which they might not otherwise. Then they can try to monetize that if the platforms allows for it, or, try to understand better their audience and monetize that. And then we aggregate all that data too to give you more scope about what your reach is. You think maybe that 1,000 people are listening to music on your Spotify account, but actually if you aggregate all the people who are listening to your music on all these various channels as your content has essentially gone viral, your audience might be much larger than that. And so we allow you to kind of understand the scope of that. And so we've been doing that largely with the music industry and, the music majors and sort of larger music companies. And we're opening up the platform at the moment to more individual creators and artists and their managers to better understand the virality of their content.
Right. So just to make sure that I got you right here, it's similar to YouTube's Content ID system, for example, but covering all the different platforms around the world.
Exactly. So exactly. It's very similar to Content ID in the way that it functions. It has some things that are a bit different. For example, we recognize your content, even if it's, 1 second of the content. So even if it's been sampled just a little bit, we'll spot it. Whereas Content ID will need at least 20 or so seconds to match the audio. So there's some, precision, and we also do things like audio matching, melody matching and things like that. So that enables us to see covers of the music and a wide variety, essentially, of copies of your work.
Yeah, very cool.
And then we're present, yes, on not just YouTube. We also have YouTube's content, but we also have, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then we go internationally. There's the Russian platform VK has more than 1 billion videos right now. That's a massive platform. There's Youku in China. There's TikTok that's blowing up right now. So we have, now 40 plus platforms that we track for artists.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think that the fact that you work with these international platforms is really important. There isn't enough understanding, I think, among US-based creators in particular, how big their presence can be on these platforms that may seem completely odd and random, like VK. I'm Russian myself, I have been living there for some time, but there is a couple of generations of people in Russia, in the country, who consume media like video and music only from VK, and they're used to it being free. It's being changed right now, but it's like massive. And if your platform helps to track down the uploads there, I think it can give really valuable information for performing artists in particular, as an example. If you see that there is a big interest in your music in China or in Brazil or in Russia, then it can really help with tour planning and things like that. So that's really powerful. TikTok is a good example as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, it's no longer, a one platform game out there. There's 40 platforms that we track. There's going to continue to be more. Some are quite genre specific. So, there might be a lot of hip hop on one platform, and another platform might be really, really big for DJs. And, YouTube definitely has a lot of dancing baby videos and such, but each platform has its own specificity and its own audience, and the reasons why people go there are quite different. And so there's both kind of a geographic aspect to it and a demographic aspect to it that varies across platform as the content travels from one platform to another.
Right. I actually want to ask you a question that I didn't plan on asking originally, but there is quite a few listeners in our audience who who are not necessarily the right owners, but the ones who sample the music and do the bootleg remixes and mixtapes. Covers usually, like, it goes without sampling, but yeah, there are creatives who just try to create high quality remixes, unofficial remixes of songs they like, and this information that you are sharing is very useful to them, so they understand how in which way their remixes will most probably be tracked down if it's a well-known artist. A question to you is how this knowledge has mainly been used. Is it mainly just to take down an unofficial remix, for example, something that hasn't been properly licensed, or it's the idea is more about tracking it just for the purpose of having the data or monetizing it whenever possible, or it's too difficult to answer?
No, it's not. It's there are still takedowns out there, but the music industry at large has moved on from that largely. And the main idea behind it is to really understand the virality of content, the fact that once you release a song now, it doesn't, it's not just going to live on that artist's page. It's going to have a life of its own and be used and be part of mixes and remixes and be in your wedding video and be in this and that. And it's going to, those 5 seconds are going to be taken here and those 10 seconds here. And so, the main thing that the music industry is trying to do is to get as much value out of it as possible. And so they're trying to make as much money as possible for artists. And so that kind of goes two ways. That goes with the platforms that have a claiming mechanism. So that might be taking the money from the advertising that's placed on that video or song. And then for most platforms, it actually goes through a better understanding of how much of this rights holder's content is on the platform to better understand their market share, essentially, and then negotiate an appropriate license with the platform.
Makes sense.
To then cover its users.
Yeah. Makes sense. Thanks a lot for explaining. And yeah, I guess it's...
obviously I think it's not best for the user to have takedowns. Everyone wants to appreciate the content, but equally, there's a level playing field that needs to be found where both, the content is available for us to listen to and the creators of that content are getting, a fair payment for their work and for their talent.
Totally. So you mentioned that the PAX product is becoming available for individual creators right now. So how is it looking exactly? So is it possible for just anyone to sign up on the website, or it will be possible in the nearest future?
Yeah, it will be possible in the near future. And so we encourage people to drop us a line if they're interested, and we're happy to also run some tests with them. So we're in a beta phase of testing out right now what it looks like for individual creators and making sure that we get as much value out of it for them as possible.
Got it. Yeah. So we are linking to everything in the show notes. Anyone interested, just check it out, see if it makes sense to you at your current stage of your career. And it's really great that you guys are open to artists just reaching out to you. I guess same goes for record labels and publishing companies.
Of course, yes.
So something related and unrelated at the same time, it's just something that we discussed before starting this conversation of ours, and it's a big topic. I'm just thinking how we can cover it relatively quickly, just to give an introduction to the theme, and I'm definitely interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And the topic is the copyright directive. That's something that's happening in the European Union, but what as I see it will be affecting everyone, all creators in the world. And some of our listeners might have heard about it as Article 13, which is now Article 17. And I guess I would start with asking you just to give a very basic explanation of what it is, of the law that has been, of this directive that is being approved in European Union. And then, just my point is to get some insights on how exactly it might be affecting everyone, the creatives in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, Article 13 or now 17, the whole logic behind it stems from wanting to balance out the way that with new technologies, new platforms, new ways of sharing content online, the world has changed since the last regulations around copyright and how artists are getting paid for the distribution of their works online. And there was an imbalance that was created between the DSPs, the platforms that are distributing content online, who are making a lot of money from advertising that is getting placed on other people's content, on everyone's content, and the people who are creating the content who are struggling, for a lot of them and most of them, to make a living out of it, to even know where their content is and how it's getting used. And they know it's out there. They have no idea at what scale, where, and they can't make money out of it. And so there was a great imbalance there between the legislation that was put in place before these platforms existed, where we could all upload whatever we wanted on them, and the reality now for artists. And so that's where Article 13 or now 17 stems from. Right. And so the situation until now was that platforms were not responsible for when somebody uploaded a copyrighted content to their platform. The platform, as long as they weren't aware that it was there, were not responsible for paying that person, essentially. And so that's what Article 17 is trying to change. It's trying to make the platforms liable for A, having proper licenses for content, and B, putting in place appropriate actions to try to, if it's not licensed, prevent that content from being uploaded, or being uploaded at least without any kind of distribution of income to the artists.
And practically it means that the content has to be checked at the moment of it being uploaded, right?
Practically, that's what it means. So it has to be checked. It does not have to be, there's no requirement for, kind of human scrutiny. It would be impossible anyway. Just on YouTube, there's more than 700 hours of content that's uploaded every minute. And then, it goes without saying for the rest of the platforms altogether. And so there needs to be a technical filtering of the content in a way.
So pretty much what you do as a platform is kind of relevant to that, because you have a system in place to execute that, essentially.
Exactly. And we've already right now built our database as more than 17 billion videos and songs. And so it includes all the publicly available content of all these platforms already. And so sure, YouTube has their own system in place, but it costs them more than $100 million to build it. Not every platform out there has that kind of money. Not everyone is Google. And so what we want is to make our system available for free to both platforms and creators on the platform side, to be able to attribute when content is uploaded, say whose it is and how they can then create revenue for these artists. And then on the artist side, know where your content is and make sure that you are getting appropriate income from that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's great that you are trying to make it available for platforms and the creators. And I see how it makes sense for you. Okay, so that's for... We've been talking about how it's going to be implemented in Europe. And to be clear, it's not yet kind of live because every country has to adopt this individual way, correct?
Absolutely. So right now it's a directive that's at the European level. In fact, it will be in place in September 2019 as a directive. And then from then on, the countries have 2 years to put in place a national law that reflects the will of the directive. And so, for example, there's things like platforms become liable for the content. Well, how is that enforced? What does that look like? So that will definitely be something that is kind of refined at the national level as the laws come in place. Now, they have 2 years to put it in place. Of course, some countries, and especially France, will want to move quicker on these things. Traditionally, France has been one of the leaders of this directive of wanting to put something in place that's better to protect creators versus the internet platforms. And yeah, so we should maybe see some laws already by summertime.
Yeah, and it's also to set an example for other countries in the Union.
Exactly.
Yeah. So just to all the listeners in North America, for example, do you have any comments on how that's important to them as well? As I see it, it's much easier for platforms to make it work with all territories at once. We've been seeing something like that happening with GDPR, where like similar rules are being enforced, applied in the US, for example, in terms of data protection. So are we going to see something similar popping up in the United States, Canada, for example?
Absolutely. Well, I think probably California also tends to follow suit with regulations like that. But essentially, Europe as a whole having this regulation in place makes it pretty much mandatory for platforms to put it in place everywhere. There's been situations in the past where, for example, Spain tried to have regulations that made Google News kind of impossible. And so they decided to shut it down in Spain. With Europe as a whole, that's just not going to happen. They're not going to shut down YouTube in the whole of Europe. The market is far too big. And so once the rules have to be put in place for Europe, they're going to have to be put in place for the US as well and for the rest of the world. I think what's going to be interesting is in the little details, because there is actually varied regulations around, for example, there's a concept in the US of fair use, which is very not measurable. It's not that, hey, if you sample 5 seconds, it's fair use. It might not be if it's considered substantial and that you're making money from it, et cetera, et cetera. But in Europe, for example, they might decide that if you've just copied 10 seconds of the content, it doesn't matter. So these things might be interesting to see it flesh out in real life, let's say.
It's a great comment here. It's related to the last question I had to you, and it's probably a big one, what it means to the creators and artists. And also, to be clear, we know that this regulation isn't implemented yet, so we really need to see how exactly it will look like when it's live, and it's not just a theoretical thing, but something that's actually over there and on the platforms as well. But so far, I hope that the creators listening to us kind of get a general idea if they're new to the topic after getting insights from you on this podcast. But should they be worried, concerned, careful? What kind of recommendations do you have or excited because they will now be, the content of the creators will now be protected better?
I think actually it's a fantastic opportunity for musicians out there to know, where their content is, get proper attribution for it, get income from it. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity for creators. I think they need to make sure that their content is properly registered with the various mechanisms that are out there. And so for us, we'll make that available for free as this falls into place. And so they can definitely look us up. And I think So I think it's just a great opportunity, in fact, for musicians.
Yeah. That's.
I think also that musicians have to respect other musicians, and so if there's a license they need to get to work with somebody else's content, then probably they should do that, because it probably will fall less through the cracks, let's say.
Yeah. It's interesting times, I think, and what you mentioned also, it makes a lot of sense. It will be essential to make sure that your music is registered where it should be. It's always been the case that you should be taking care of such things. Not all musicians we've seen and even worked with kind of spend time on that, and some intentionally don't care about it too much. They just want their music to be out there. But when you're in a situation when you upload your own music video and it's taken down because you didn't do homework to register it on with the right organizations and platforms, then it's something that you will definitely be concerned about. So, but I think it's going to be good. I tend to look positively at all changes that are happening to this industry. Let's hope that it's going to be implemented in the right way. But if you have any additional insights on this, please let me know.
No, exactly. I think we will have to wait a little bit longer for the laws to be put in place at the national level and really understand the kind of nitty-gritty of it, actually. But in theory, I think it can be positive. I think, for musicians, we need to see it as an opportunity and just make it available for free, though. I think, this attribution of your rights needs to be available for everyone, and that's I think that's particularly crucial, and so that's what we're working towards.
I like your mission and approach. Thank you for what you've shared with us personally, and for what you do at PAX. I have a strong feeling that we'll be hearing a lot more about your company in the nearest months and years. So looking forward to seeing the new developments, the new platforms you support, the fact that anyone will be able to just sign up and register the music we throw through you. It's definitely something that's very important. So thank you a lot. Really.
No, thank you so much for the kind words of encouragement. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Let me know on social media once again, and it will be particularly cool if you tweet something mentioning PAX on Twitter. The handle is literally just at PAX, PEX. And while there is nothing happening in regards to Article 1317 rights there now, you can see that it may have a massive effect on internet in the coming 2 years. So keep an eye on it all, and if you have a strong opinion about the matter, I tend to observe and analyze without taking sides whenever possible, but I highly encourage anyone who thinks strongly about such matters speak up. The results of related movements and discussions you can find online, so please look it up if you want to learn more. And share with me your findings and any thoughts you have on that matter. And now that's it. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you here again in a couple of weeks.
You've been listening to Music Growth Talks with Andrew Apanov. Find more episodes and subscribe at musicgrowthtalks.com.